Ladies and gentlemen, I am Tosh Berman, your host for Tosh Talks. I just recently came back from Tokyo, Japan, and I purchased some music. But first, I first started going to Japan in 1989, and my wife introduced me to an artist, a singer by the name of Togawa Jun, or Jun Togawa. In Japanese, you usually give the family name first and then their given name afterwards, if you're doing an exact translation of their name. Some people honor that system, so I'll do my best. So Togawa, the family name, first name is Jun. And Jun Togawa, I listened to a lot of Japanese pop music or J-pop at the time, but tell you the truth, I didn't really like it that much until I heard a couple albums by Haroumi Hosono, who is famously a member of Yellow Magic Orchestra, or better known in the United States or Europe as YMO. And I think I can't overstate the importance of Yellow Magic Orchestra to the Japanese music world. Because not only of their albums they made, but also the solo albums that came out of YMO, including Hosono, and including the more famously probably to American and European audiences, Ryuichi Sakamoto, who also came from YMO. And Hosono I find a little bit more interesting in Sakamoto because Hosono is a huge canvas in himself. He's a major Japanese music figure. And Hosono has done a series of solo albums as well, of course, with YMO, but he also produced other people. He had his own record label called Non-Standard in the 80s. And also with YMO, he had a record label called Yen Records, like dollar, the yen. And so Hosono is not only a musician and composer, but also a tastemaker of sorts, and so was Ryuichi Sakamoto. And the importance of a tastemaker in Japanese culture is very, very important. And it's important everywhere. I mean, there are people, look up certain people, even in English or America, who you think, oh, if so-and-so likes this, therefore it must be interesting. Of course, I'm speaking about me. Because I know you're watching this show to get, to find out what's happening in the world of interest. Because I edit everything out that's not interesting and just talk about what's interesting. So Hosono, I'm talking about Hosono before Jun Togawa because I have to give like a little narrative in a sense. So Hosono is a really interesting guy because he did the electronic thing with YMO. YMO roughly is like a Japanese version of Kraftwerk, yet not. But general reputation and how one sees Yellow Magic Orchestra in the West, they see it as a Japanese version of Kraftwerk. But Yellow Magic Orchestra or YMO, all three musicians are highly, not only they're great musicians, but they study music. They came from a university, especially Sakamoto, who studied classical music, and also was raised during his generation as part of the Shinjuku, Shibuya student revolt time during the late 60s. And Sakamoto was very much influenced by that era and time. And interestingly enough, his father was a book editor who worked with Yukio Mishima, among other great Japanese writers. So Sakamoto came from a very highly literate musical world, as well as Hosono. And Hosono has done everything from, the early Hosono records almost to me sound like a Ry Cooder album, or the band. He got into this sort of Americana thing very early. And it's interesting because he's a Japanese personality figure who's totally sort of obsessed with America or American music, like folk, country, early rock and roll. And then he got interested in conjunction or juxtaposition, he was also interested in Japanese pop music as well, and music from Hawaii. So Hosono is one of the first, in Japan, I think probably one of the first world quote-unquote musicians who appreciate other cultures. And he's very much like I always get the impression that he's sort of like a professor or a teacher in a way. And every time you get a record, you're getting not only the music, but you're getting the history of that music and where it came from and other artists. And Hosono is very generous, as well as Sakamoto or the whole Yellow Magic Orchestra world, generous in giving credit to various different forms of music of the past and stuff like that. So anyway, Hosono and Sakamoto and their management company started a couple of record labels. One is Yen Records, and then Hosono himself started Non-Standard Records, which is mostly his fellow artists, his own, not only his solo albums, but his fellow artists, Japanese artists, but also he put out albums by the Lounge Lizards, the great jazz, bebop jazz, new wave, no wave band with John Lurie and so forth, and Arto Lindsay. Anyway, so we come to releases that are connected to Hosono, and specifically a singer I'm totally in love with, Togawa Jun, or Jun Togawa. And Togawa Jun was in a band originally called Guernica. This is their first album. Back cover. And it's a band where she's the singer, and this gentleman here is Koji Ueno. And Ueno is a composer, musician, and like Hosono and Sakamoto, highly trained musician. He went to university, studied music. He knows classical music. And you get the impression when you hear his music, he knows a lot about the culture of music. He knows a lot about early 20th century music as well, of course, like Bach, Beethoven, and Handel, and all that, all the classical composers. And Guernica is a band. It was originally a duo. It became a trio, but I'll explain that a little bit later. But at this point, it's a duo. So Ueno wrote all the music. Togawa sings all the songs. And to describe their music, you have to start to think of their image. I mean, this is like the image right here of sorts, or better yet here. It's basically Japan or Tokyo circa 1930s or during the war years, and maybe a little bit after the war years. And it's not a nostalgia for a past, but more of a appreciation of a style and time when things were happening culture-wise before World War II closed culture, you know. But at the time of the 30s and 40s and onward, Japanese pop culture was very much open to Western influences, and, you know, with literature of sorts, as well as films and music, of course. So Guernica has a strong sensibility towards Western music, but done very much in a Japanese style. It's like a Japanese acceptance of Western music, which is totally different if you're a Westerner appreciating Western music or Japanese appreciating this Japanese music. Guernica sort of steps outside the circle, looks inside the circle, and sort of looks at this music, and then they sort of digest it, they make it, and then they present it. And Guernica made 3 remarkable albums. The first 2 were kind of electronically, you know, like more synthesized strings. But the third album, which I have on CD, but I don't have it on vinyl yet, is fully orchestrated. It was a full orchestration. Must have been a very expensive record to make. Anyway, Guernica has a very strong style, a very strong sensibility. It has a very strong 1930s feel. And the weird thing about it is Togawa Jun. Her voice can go to the deepest of the deepest valleys to the highest of the angels. In a way, she sort of reminds me of Yoko Ono, in a way, not in the sensibility of Yoko or them being both Japanese, but I'm comparing them because of their voices. Yoko has incredible voice, and Togawa has a great voice as well, though Togawa uses her voice very much different than Yoko Ono. Yoko Ono is more like an art thing, or like an art music or art piece. Togawa Jun is definitely not only a pop singer, but she's also an art singer as well, and borderline in the avant-garde almost. She's a hard person to define. So there's Guernica, and then there's a fellow by the name of Ohta Keiichi, and this is his album. This is him from the very retro-looking photograph. It looks like from the 30s. And though this is Keiichi's artwork on the cover, he's a famous illustrator and artist. But he also wrote lyrics for Guernica. So he became like the third member of Guernica, officially. Sometimes photographed as a trio, sometimes not. But he was responsible for the words and responsible for pretty much for the graphics of Guernica, which is a huge, big part of the whole Guernica world. And his illustrations reek of, again, like from 1930s, 1940s, sometimes like propaganda, Japanese illustrations during the war, and it's sort of playing with all that image. And again, it's dealing with the past, but using the past as a source to make something new. And it's very exciting. I mean, this is a really great album. You think this is him singing songs, but it's basically him. It's a group of songs where he wrote the lyrics, and mostly Koji Ueno wrote the music of Guernica. So this is like a Guernica album without Togawa Jun. Without Jun. Then, now we come to the meat of the matter, the Jun Togawa albums, the solo albums. She started making, these Guernica records are the early 80s or mid 80s. The Togawa records are from like 85 and onward. And she also became famous for doing commercials. She did like a toilet cleaning commercial that was shown a lot in Japan. So people knew her name associated with the commercial of cleaning toilets, which doesn't sound very sophisticated, but it somehow fits in the Togawa Jun world somehow. And the Togawa Jun world is a world of great eccentricities, I suspect. It's very artful. And it is underground music, but underground pop. It's not J-pop, or it's not made for the masses, though people know of Togawa Jun because she was also an actress. And her sister was a known actress and a sort of teen idol or idol singer. Togawa Jun's work is very interesting on many, many levels. And she's a great collaborator. Each album, she worked with different people, all Japanese. And what's interesting about her is that, like she worked with Ueno on the Guernica project, and she went on without him. I suspect he may have appeared on some of her solo recordings, but overall, it's pretty much her producing her own work, writing songs with other people, or adopting songs by people like Serge Gainsbourg. But I suspect that either the lyrics are, her singing is in Japanese, so she either had the lyrics translated from French to Japanese, or I strongly suspect that she rewrote the lyrics, but kept the Gainsbourg melody. I'm not sure about this. But nevertheless, I think I have this in order, but this is like her first album, her first solo record. And it's called Tama Hime Sama. And it's her first solo album. It's like a fly girl. Like she has like fly wings here. And this album is amazing. It's interesting about Togawa Jun is that the source of her music, it's always dangerous to make a comparison with other people, because when you make a comparison, you're just trying to sell that idea of who that person is by using other artists. And I'm going to mention names, but you should not take it for granted this is exactly what they sound like. But imagine Togawa Jun sort of being a combination of like Sparks, a little bit of Kate Bush in her ambitious sound, and French yeye music. But combined in a blender, you put all that in a blender, you blend it up, You pour it in a big glass, and that glass is Jun Togawa, but she adds 80% of that formula. So you get a touch of the Sparks, you get a touch of French yeye music, and of course a little bit of Kate Bush, in my opinion. Especially since Kate Bush is sometimes kind of operatic and does big stage productions. Togawa Jun voice is very operatic at times, but very punk rock at the same time. Oh, and it's also very new wave, 80s new wave, punk, bet, with all these other elements in it whatsoever. And this is their second album. I think it's called Jun Togawa Unit. So it's like a band more. And it's all Japanese. I can't give you the pronunciation of this album. But the music is actually very folk-oriented in a way, but not American folk, but Japanese folk music, or music from Okinawa. It's very rooted into the past. And Togawa Jun does the music in a very new way. You know, we have a movement in America called Americana music, which means bands like, like when the Byrds went country and western, or the Band, or certain aspects of Bob Dylan, which they sort of appreciate the roots and they show their roots and they play with the roots. Togawa Jun does the same thing with the Japanese roots, but she totally expands it into a different realm, a different change. It's like an avant-garde artist looking at her past and rechanging everything. So it's not like Americana music, but on this album, she does focus on her past, the music past of Japan, or from other Asian countries. And sometimes she does classical music. Sometimes she does a melody of Schubert or Vivaldi. She does like a Vivaldi music, and she just sings over the melody of Vivaldi. And it's a remarkable album. It's a great album. And I think this is the next album. Excuse for the glossiness, but this is like so packed so well. She did the design. This album is called Suki Suki Daisuki. And this is like a militant new wave album. It's like totally like bouncing, very synthesized, but it has a really crazy element to it. And it's like, again, it's very artful. It's not commercial sounding. It's very pop music, but it's like out there pop music. It's definitely not J-pop. And it's all her albums are very short. I mean, they're long playing albums, but they all last probably just about 20 minutes. This album only has 8 songs, and it's probably like 25 minutes, perhaps. And this is one where she has a Gainsbourg cover. And interestingly enough, she does a version of Angel Baby that was originally done by Rosie and the Originals. And she does that song in English. And it's a very, the original version of Angel Baby, if you ever heard it, is very eerie and very kind of sounds like it comes from outer space. A beautiful record, a beautiful early rock and roll American record. And Togawa honors that sort of strangeness of that song and that recording by her own version. And it's interesting her doing an American song because, as far as I know, she has no interest, or there's no Western music in her work. I mean, there's like new wave type of stuff, but it's Japanese new wave music. It's not British new wave music or American new wave music. It's totally Japanese orientated. And of all the artists I heard from Japan, I heard so many Japanese artists who definitely have a strong American feel, or they have a strong feeling for American music or British music. But Togawa Jun's roots are not American at all, or it's either Asian or Japanese. And that's what makes her unique. She's doing pop music based on Japanese melodies and Japanese pop sensibility. It's not rooted in Europe or America, except when she does like a Gainsbourg song or a Vivaldi piece or a Schubert melody of some sort. But even that, it's like obviously a Japanese sensibility, and her sensibility, even more important, over that Western melody. So it's very hard to locate Togawa Jun, but you could find her on YouTube if you want to hear some of the music. Like the albums I have here, I have found on YouTube where you can hear it totally in YouTube, and there's like video footage of her. And she's still around, she's still playing to this day, and people like John Zorn and Jim O'Rourke have great admiration for her, just to give you the Western, what type of artists like her work. And I think if you like Tosh Talks, or you like what I play, or not what I play, but what I talk about, I think for sure you will be interested in Togawa Jun or Jun Togawa's work. Guernica is fantastic. And also the Hosono albums, when you can find them. They're not easy to find, but if you're in Japan, even they can be difficult even in Japan to find sometimes. But it's important work, an important aspect of Japanese pop culture and pop music. And Togawa Jun is one amazingly unique, brilliant artist who should be more well known in the West. And this is Tosh Berman. This is Tosh Talks. Thank you.